If Washington can haul in these guys, they'll have the best defensive line class in the Big Ten.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKDOWNCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Got a really fun show coming at all of the everydayers out there today, but just a quick reminder, wherever you get this podcast, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, make sure to click that subscribe button, click the little bell as well, so you don't miss it when we post a new video. And if you're on the audio only side of things, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. It all really does help the channel out a lot. Now, like I said, really fun show coming at you today. I love the NFL. I love all things UW alums in the NFL. So I'm going to throw some bold predictions at you for some pro dogs during the 2025 season, but we'll get there in a little bit because I want to talk about Jedd Fisch and Kevin Cummings' high risk, high reward strategy on the recruiting trail when it comes to the wide receivers. But we're going to get there in a little bit because I look at this defensive line class. I look at all the players Washington is in on, and I say there is a real shot that if Washington can reel in all of their top targets, that this will be the best defensive line class in the Big Ten. Now, we might go out there and look and, a couple of 5 stars, maybe end up at some other programs and, some schools. I'm not going to name anybody in particular. Who could that be? Might say, oh, well, look at how high our class is rated. That's clearly better. But I look at the players that Washington is looking at along the defensive line now that they have Derek Coleman-Brosa in the boat, especially. And I say there is such a fantastic opportunity for Jedd Fisch, Ryan Walters, Jason Kafusi, and Aaron Van Horn to pull in some of their top targets and prove not only that their development and their talent evaluation are top-notch, but that they can go out there and get these guys on the field early and show, hey, we saw these guys out of high school and we know that they can make a big impact right away. Now, the first guy I want to talk about in that light is the number one player, in my opinion, on Washington's board right now, regardless of position, and that's 4-star defensive lineman Khary Wilder. I look at this kid, 6'4", 260-pound defensive lineman from Sarah High School down in Southern California, and I say whatever position this kid thinks that he can play at the next level, he probably can. Because, like I said, with that frame, he's already just an elite playmaker in terms of his motor, in terms of the size, the frame, the arm length. He has all of the necessarily tools needed to succeed at the college level. And you throw on the tape and you say, this kid is such an aggressive run defender. He knows how to get into the backfield with ease against the run as a pass rusher. He just creates havoc whenever he steps on the field. So I look at that and I say, if you're able to beat out some of these other schools that have gotten involved in his recruitment, whether it be Georgia, Ohio State, some of these other top tier programs from around the country, it's really nice to see Washington be one of those schools that offered him a little bit earlier on before he really did blow up. And now he's got something close to 30 offers, I believe. I look at that recruitment and I say, I think UW is in a really good spot with him. And with how hard the coaching staff is pushing to secure a top flight defensive line class, I really do believe that he's the top priority on their board. And I don't want to go out and make a prediction and say, oh, I'd be surprised if he ends up elsewhere at this point in time. But I just look at the way Washington has been recruiting him for a long time now. We've seen him take several unofficial visits over the last couple of months. He's set to come up on June 20th for an official visit. And I just love where UW sits with him at this point in time. Now, I could say that exact same thing about arguably my favorite player in the class right now, and that's 4-star defensive tackle T.I. Umu-Cais. Lars and I have talked a lot about the other offers that he's got and just the other visits that he's been taking, where it's Stanford, UCLA, Colorado State is in there. And I just say, I really do, once again, like where Washington sits here, but this is the kind of kid where we look at some of the guys that are going to be departing after the season, whether it be Logan Sakapolu, Simone Pepa, Taitayu Uyunglele. I just look at some of these defensive tackles, Antieri Thompson being another one, who won't be on this roster in 2026. And I say, I look at his frame and his physicality at 6'4", 307 pounds. And I say, if this kid wants to take a role as a true freshman, it's there for him. Not only will the opportunity be available for him, but he has the play style and play strength to back it up. I like to rave about this kid because when I remember throwing on his film right after he got offered and saying, "Oh, it's really nice to see UW going after another, just West Coast region-ish." I mean, I know he plays in Colorado, but just to see somebody in that light and say, "Oh, okay, it's nice to see that," and then you turn on the tape and you say, "Whoa, it's nice to see him get backed up as the number one player in Colorado right now. This is one of the best defensive linemen west of Texas." And I look at just the way he's able to use his hands, the intelligence that he plays with, and just so many other things when it comes to rushing with a plan. Again, the hand usage, the hand fighting, the counter moves, all these different things that he's able to do at a level where at high school, when you're that size, a lot of players just get really, really used to winning with power over and over and over again. Derek Coleman Bruce said as much on this show when I talked to him a few weeks ago. He said, "Yeah, I'm not trying to disrespect any other kids, but I know that I'm so much bigger and stronger than a lot of them that I could do that on every single play if I wanted to." And T.I. Umu-Cais is another player in that boat where he certainly could do that if he wanted to, but he doesn't because he understands what it's going to take to win at the college level and then continue to develop and potentially make it to the NFL one day. So I look at that kid and I say, he needs to be another just top priority for Washington on the recruiting trail. And I think Washington sits in a great spot with both those guys. And I also think they're sitting in a really great spot with the local edge rushers, Fa Siale and David Schwerzel over at Odunze High School. They both have their official visits set up over the course of the next couple of weeks. And I look at both of those guys and I say, I just talked about rushing with a plan. I think it's really interesting when we see defensive lines like the one that Odunze has right now, where it's not just Fa Siale. It's not just David Schwerzel. They also have Tavita Nonu in the 2027 class at defensive tackle, who looks like he might end up being the best player in the state for that year as well. And something that I find really, really interesting about that is when these guys get a chance to play together from that young of an age, even, outside of doing independent activities, whether it be, for training programs outside of football or 7-on-7 or whatever else it might be, seeing these guys at the high school level get to grow that chemistry and just understand what it's like to play alongside another player who is also going to be playing Division I college football. It's really interesting to watch both of their films because it feels like you could watch either guy and you could see both of them pop on film because of the strength, the size, the physicality, the ability to move all over the defensive line that they both possess, which is one of the other reasons that I really do believe that if they can secure commitments from all four of those guys, that this could end up being the best defensive line class that any school brings in during the 2026 cycle. Now, when you have 5, 6, and maybe a 7th in a guy like Dakota Dixon, the 3-star defensive lineman from Northern California, in that boat, that's great. That's a really nice win for you because just having the masses is really important. And then, if somebody like Derek Coleman Bruce or Khary Wilder can get on the field and play right away, that's really solid. And, maybe somebody like T.I. Umu-Cais isn't too far behind some of these guys. Maybe they're draft eligible as juniors and they think they can go be a first, second round pick. Great. That looks good for your development. But then you can also have the guys who want to come back for their senior year, who don't like their draft grades, or maybe just need one more season to continue to improve on things. And you can take somebody like Dakota Dixon again, who I really like his film. I've talked to several scouts that work in various college recruiting departments around the country who have told me with Dakota that they really like his upside as he continues to refine his athleticism and become a little bit more explosive, that he's somebody who has a really bright future to the next level as well. You take somebody like that, you redshirt him for a year, and then down the line, it's, this player popped as well and was part of just a really, really strong class. Now, you combine all that with maybe somebody else like a Landon Barnes, who's scheduled to take his official visit on May 30th, or someone else in that mold of just a big, long, athletic pass rusher who plays that true wide 9 outside linebacker sort of look. And, with somebody like Khary Wilder or Derek Coleman Bruce, who are 6'4", 6'5", 260 to 270, you don't need to have him kick to the inside if you need to, or move him all over the formation. You can have somebody who can just play that true outside linebacker sort of role. This is a pass rush where when you're losing 13 guys over the next 2 seasons along the defensive line, taking whoever you can and as many top-tier quality bodies as you can to continue to propel that forward is going to be very important. So over the next month or so, I feel that there's a lot to watch along the defensive line, and you really should keep an eye out for it because I think this coaching staff is going to close on plenty, if not each and every single one of their top targets on the recruiting trail. Now, I don't know if I feel that way at wide receiver, but let's talk about it. right after a message from our friends over at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKDOWNCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKDOWNCollege for half off your first year. So let's talk about wide receiver. I look at this position and I say, I have been very impressed with what Jedd Fisch and Kevin Cummings throughout their careers coaching in college. I look at Jedd Fisch's time in Arizona and I say, I trust what he's going to be putting out there between the guys they were able to develop, like Tyro McMillan, like Jacob Cowling, like Jorian Singer, where they had him for a brief period of time. And I say, I really like where this team is going. We look at 2024. Denzel Boston took the leap that he was expected to take forward. Giles Jackson had a career season working out of the slot in this role. Jeremiah Hunter, the usage was a little odd, but these things happen, especially when you go and look at some of the advanced numbers. I say all that because Washington did a really good job selling all of that on the recruiting trail in 2025. You go out there and you take 5 prospects. Get a couple of 4-stars and Chris Lawson, Raiden Vinespray, and then a couple of really promising high-end 3-stars, and guys like Marcus Harris and Deji Jose, and then a true diamond in the rough that I really don't know how he didn't get more attention in Desmond Roebuck. I look at those 5 receivers and I say, you've got yourself set up with a really nice class. Obviously, you can't stop at 1. You have to continue recruiting year in and year out. Now, I look at this 2026 class, and Washington has 3 official visits lined up according to 247 Sports. 2 of those guys are committed to other programs. That's 4-star wide receiver Vance Spafford, who's committed to Georgia, and 4-star wide receiver Madden Williams, who's committed to Texas A&M. The third player in that is 4-star wide receiver Mason James, who is from Norman North High School in Oklahoma. Not a traditional stronghold for Washington on the recruiting trail. Now, again, like I said a little bit earlier, this is a high-risk, high-reward scenario. I look at both Vance Spafford and Mason James, and I say, if those guys end up at Washington, they are picture-perfect fits for what this offense wants to do. Both of them are very explosive. They've got great high-end speed. I think Vance Spafford might be a little bit faster at this point in time. And then Vance also has had the, you can call it a privilege if you want, of having to work out at Mission Viejo High School across from Dijon Lee, 5-star corner who ended up at Alabama, and 4-star cornerback Jaron Jones. So he's had to go against some pretty high-end competition. I'm sure you can say the same about Mason James in Oklahoma. Those are just names I know off the top of my head because they also are or have been Washington targets. But I look at those guys and I say, Washington has a major opportunity to bring in some real high-end talent. And I'm not saying that to disparage anybody in the 2025 class. I look at that and I say, this is where we are on the recruiting trail right now. And I say, we have not seen this coaching staff bring in those true top targets that they went after last season, because we saw them do that with Andrew Marsh and Donovan Olubade. But those guys ended up at Michigan and Missouri. So you struck out there. And again, that's okay because you still pulled in a strong class. But I look at where this recruiting class is right now, and it doesn't seem like there are any backup options. Now, I'm not saying that because I believe that Washington is not in the picture for any of these guys, because not only do you have them set up on official visits, but you go and you read the tea leaves, you go look at some of the reports from 247, from On3, from some people over there. It sounds like it might be down to Miami or Washington for Vance Spafford, which would be a really nice sign. And this is without, counting a couple of guys that I'll get to in a few minutes here, like Daniel Odom and Luke Weaver, who I'm really interested in. But I look at where Washington is right now, and Washington wasn't considered the leader for Mason James for a very long time. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case anymore. I feel like they really have brought it to, at the very least, even with Oklahoma. I know Texas is making a big push, and he's got all of those three schools in his top five. And I really do believe that it is down to those three schools, and he's going to make a decision at the end of June following his official visits. But again, he's coming from a place that Washington normally doesn't recruit very well. So if you strike out there, and I'm not saying that Washington will, but I look at that and I say, if you take a swing and you end up missing, that's something where I feel like Washington could find a way to get a foothold in Arizona or California really late in the process and find somebody that they like. Maybe you go after another flip, because I look at somebody like Denarius Gray at Auburn, who came up on an official visit in late April. An Auburn commit there. And I don't know how I feel about that one at this point in time. It seemed like, just a bit out of the blue, but if you're able to get him up on an official visit, that is a really nice sign. So I just look at where this whole class is right now, and I say, you have the opportunity to bring in one of the top classes in school history, but you also kind of are setting yourself up to fall flat on your face if you don't land at least two of those guys. And I want to be very clear, I'm not saying that that's what the coaching staff is going to do, but there are optics at play here where, let's say Vance Spafford either signs with Georgia or ends up at Miami. All of a sudden you're at a place where, oh yeah, that was your top target. And, if you're able to hit on one of these guys, that's really great. But you need at least two, in my opinion, to make this a success. Because if you're able to land Mason James, that's a really great start. And then flip just one of these three guys from California in Daniel Odom, Madden Williams, or Vance Spafford, you're sitting in a really nice spot, and then you can continue to add on. And I think that might be a little bit more stomachable in this class because of what you did on the recruiting trail last year. But at the same point, it's one of those things where recruiting has, and always will be a what have you done for me lately sort of business, where I think back to some of the later years of Chris Peterson, where Jordan Papow had a couple of years where he really struggled, and then he would pick it up a notch. And we saw the same thing with Akaika Malloy. There was one year he didn't bring in anybody. Next year, he's primary or secondary recruiter on like 8 guys. So it's something where these kinds of ebbs and flows do happen, but at wide receiver, I feel like it's really, really important to be able to bring in your top targets every single year because of what this offense is. And that's where I'm really curious to see how this is going to shape up, because I think that Washington has done a really good job selling this offense so far on the recruiting trail. And I think that message is really resonating with recruits. And I look at where this room is going to be after this year, where I fully believe that Denzel Boston will be gone to the NFL draft, where, in my opinion, he's going to end up being a first-round pick. Omari Evans will be out of eligibility after this season. So we're probably going to see guys like Justice Williams, Rashid Williams, and then some of these freshmen, whether it be Chris Lawson, Raiden Vinesbright, Marcus Harris, alongside guys like Audric Harris and Kevin Green, take a step forward in 2026. But there's still going to be openings for these young freshmen to fit in, because Jedd Fisch will always leave room for them to do that. Now, in my opinion, your perfect wide receiver class right now is Vance Spafford, Mason James, and Daniel Odom. Like I said, I wanted to make sure I circled around and talked about Daniel Odom and Luke Weaver for a minute, because I look at Luke Weaver, and I don't know if that recruitment is necessarily finished, where once he got that USC offer, I did feel good about where Washington was before that happened. After that, it was, okay, yeah, he's probably going to USC. And obviously that ended up being the case. If he ends up taking some official visits elsewhere in the fall, we'll see what that looks like. But I look at Daniel Odom, and I think Washington has a chance to win out over Oklahoma for a second straight year. If he ends up setting an official visit with the Huskies after coming up for an unofficial, I believe he was here for the junior day, that's going to be a really nice win and a really nice start. But I think that would also just be the perfect just late addition to this class, or late addition to the visits, whatever way it ends up working out, for several reasons. Because this offense really does thrive with these 5'10", 5'11" receivers that are really explosive, that can line up inside, line up outside, and just win with speed and get down the field and stretch the field and just line up in stack formations and get clean releases that way. So I think that that's going to be a really big part of that. But having somebody on the other side of the field who can just be split out wide, outside the numbers, and just be a contested catch winner sort of guys. We've seen Denzel Boston do. Obviously, he does a lot more than that. But I think Daniel Odom is the perfect sort of guy to fit into that mold. So I look at just those three guys and I say, I think that would be the perfect class for Washington. But there's so much risk involved with this, Where if we're sitting here at the end of July and, maybe Vance Spafford has said, no, I'm going to end up signing with Georgia. And Mason James is at Oklahoma, but you got Daniel Odom. Maybe this is a really good start, but that's why I think you need two of these guys to really, really make it a success, because you're taking a big swing here, but you need to find a way to make it pay off after you weren't able to do that last year. Now, a couple of guys from Washington's 2024 draft class, they were able to hit it big in their first year in the NFL. A couple of guys, they were off to a little bit of a slower start. Let's talk about what they might be able to do in 2025. I wanted to start this off with a really, really bold take. As all our everydayers here on YouTube can see, I want to talk about some of my biggest, boldest predictions for any pro Husky. There are 40 plus of them right now across camps, roster invites, and various rosters across the NFL in 2025. And there's no better place to start than with the number 8 overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft. That's Michael Penix Jr. Now, for anybody who was not up to date, or maybe they take a little bit of time off from pro Huskies after they, leave college and go off to the NFL, Michael Penix got 3 starts last season. Michael Penix threw for 775 yards over 5 appearances, 3 starts, which is an average of 258.3 yards per game. You multiply that by 17, you've got 4,391 yards. I don't believe that Michael Penix is going to reach that number this coming season, because I think he's going to go even higher than that. I was looking at this and just kind of off the top of my head, I wrote down some predictions, as you can see right here. And one of the ones that I had was, I think, and this is before I even decided to sit down and do that math, I said, Michael Penix is going to throw for 4,500 yards this year. There were 3 quarterbacks in the NFL that surpassed 4,500 yards last year, or just even hit that number. Baker Mayfield, who threw for 4,500 exactly. Jared Goff was at 4,629, and Joe Burrow, who led the league with 4,918 passing yards. I think that Michael Penix is going to have very little trouble reaching that number. And I think a big reason for that is Atlanta has really put a nice solid system around him, where people are going to question that pick, question signing Kirk Cousins, but this is a really, really strong offense. When you look at Drake London as the number 1, we've seen Darnell Mooney really come into his own as a big part of that offense. You've got Kyle Pitts, who any fantasy football player knows what I'm talking about. I'm just going to leave it at that. And then you've got Bijan Robinson, who is one of the better pass-catching backs in the league. You combine that with a pretty strong offensive line. Shout out to another former UW first-round pick and Caleb McGarry. And I think that this is a very, very achievable number for Michael Penix. So I took it a step further, and I said, I think he's going to go for 35-plus passing touchdowns. And you can go check out all those numbers over on FanDuel if you want. Shout out to our good friends over there. And I just look at these numbers, and I say, these are the kind of numbers that would just really continue to add to Washington's growing acumen after, some of the dark ages that we talked about on yesterday's show. And I just say that Michael Penix could end up being, I don't necessarily know if they'll give him any kind of award for most improved or anything like that as the NFL continues to roll out all these new different kinds of awards, but it could make him a dark horse candidate for MVP. I think with those kind of numbers, he's going to end up leading the Atlanta Falcons to the NFC South division title and leading them to the playoffs. I think that these are all very, very possible things for Michael Penix Jr. to do over the course of the season. And I'm really excited to see it happen because, as any Husky fan knows, he deserves this opportunity as much as anybody. And I'm so excited to see what a full season of just his talent at the NFL level is going to look like. The NFL is starting to hype him up. We've seen some of these fun videos of him from early training camp where he just throws one of the best deep balls in the NFL. And I think it's going to look like so much fun, stretched out over a course of the full season. And I just look at what the rest of the NFC South holds. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers or Tampa Bay Huskies, whatever you want to call them, since they have so many guys on that roster, are probably going to be the biggest challenge. Carolina's got some nice young pieces. And then the Saints are kind of a dumpster fire. So we don't necessarily need to get into their opponents too much. But I say all that because this division is one of the more winnable ones in football. You don't have a perennial power like the Chiefs or what the Buffalo Bills have turned into in the AFC East, or, I know the NFC East division champion changes every year, but the way the Eagles have played over the last couple of years, you don't have that in the NFC South. And with Michael Penix at the helm, I really believe that the Falcons can turn into that and rip off 3, 4, 5 division titles in a row because they have a young core of guys who they don't need to worry about paying all of them for the next couple of seasons. So you can find a way to make that work. And if Michael can just continue to do what he did at the college level, this is going to be one of the most fun teams to watch in the NFL. And if you need a reason to throw on your TV on Sundays, not like I do, that's just what I want to do anyways, even if I wasn't getting paid to do any of this, I would make Atlanta Falcons television appointment viewing this fall. It's also really great to see that they have 5 primetime games, which only 3 teams in the NFL had more than that last year. So the NFL is betting big on Mike as well. Now, let's go to his go-to target, who was picked right after him in the 2024 NFL draft, and that's Rome Oduinze. I was listening to some comments that Ben Johnson, the new head coach of the Chicago Bears, and Antoine Randall, the wide receivers coach, were making about him. I was talking with my good friend Taylor Dahl. Shout out to the Making Monsters podcast and everything she does over there with SB Nation and everything. I just couldn't be excited about more excited about what Rome Oduinze brings to the table. I look at what he did last year. He finished 3rd on the team in targets, catches, in yards, and 4th in touchdowns with 3 touchdowns. And again, that's 53 catches, 734 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So that's a pretty solid stat line for a rookie. I know people look at what Malik Neighbors did with the Giants last year, and even Marvin Harrison, where he had a couple of blow-up games with the Arizona Cardinals, and they say, oh, was Rome Oduinze worth the number 9 overall pick? Yes. Resounding yes. I don't think that that's up for debate when you think about the player and the person that he is. Rome Oduinze is going to be one of the best receivers in the NFL for a very long time, in my opinion. And these are all things that are going to be wonderful for Jedd Fisch to sell on the recruiting trail when maybe Rome will be one of the honorary head coaches at the 2026 spring game. We'll see how all that works out. But I look at Rome Oduinze in year 2 with Keenan Allen out the door, who was the guy that took a lot of targets away from him. And then when Keenan Allen went down, that's when Rome had a couple of his best games. And I say, I think he's going to go for 1,000 yards easily this year. Ben Johnson spent 3 years in the NFL as a play caller with the Detroit Lions before he took this job, and he created 4,000-yard receivers. He had Amon-Ra St. Brown do it 3 times, and then not only did Amon-Ra do it in 2024, but Jamison Williams did as well. I look at DJ Moore, and this is the kind of guy that I really do believe that Ben Johnson is going to try to find a way to funnel targets to him because he's just so good after the catch behind the line of scrimmage. Just throw it to him on a screen, and he finds a way to make plays. But Rome is the kind of guy who can make plays at all 3 levels of the field. And I think that's going to be a really, really important part of this offense for the Bears in 2025, because I look at this team and I didn't necessarily agree with it myself, but they spent the number 10 overall pick on Colson Loveland, the tight end from Michigan, and their 2nd-round pick on Luther Burden, one of the better wide receivers in this past draft from Missouri. Now, fun little side note, I remember when Jedd Fisch was going around telling players some of the draft results after that spring practice that they were having during night 1 of the NFL draft. Jonah Coleman was a little shocked that a tight end went in the top 10, but feels like more of a scheme fit there than anything else. But I look at this Bears team, and Rome Oduinze is going to be an integral part of everything that happens on offense this year. So I think if he was able to do that as a rookie behind one of the worst offensive lines in the league, that unit got a major upgrade over the course of this offseason, giving Caleb Williams a little bit more time to throw. And Ben Johnson is just going to be such a breath of fresh air for him, just from a coaching perspective and what he's going to bring to the table compared to what the last kind of disaster of a staff between Matt Eberflus and Shane Waldron gave him. I know Seahawks fans know what I'm talking about when it comes to Shane Waldron, but I look at all that and I say, if Rome Oduinze gets that 1,000-yard mark this year, I think he can easily double his touchdown number from 3 to 6, or maybe even go even higher, 7, 8 touchdowns, something like that. I think that he's going to easily make the Pro Bowl. I still have some questions about this team. I think they're ready to take a big leap forward in 2025, but I look at where they are right now, and I think that Rome Oduinze is such an important part of their future. Ryan Poles selected him in the top 10 for a reason and paired him with Caleb Williams for a reason. And I think we're going to start to see that this year because all of the pieces are in place for those guys to thrive. And I think we're going to see that. Now, the last guy I want to talk about before I get out of here today is another just absolutely phenomenal person that we've gotten a chance to know over the years, and that's Carson Bruner. I look at Carson Bruner, and he was Washington's lone selection in the 2025 NFL draft, and I think he's going to make a name for himself. I look at the Steelers linebacking core right now, and I'm not overly impressed. When I look at this depth chart, you've got a couple of solid names in there, a couple of, just kind of wily veteran sort of guys, And I think Carson Bruner's just vast experience at Washington, not just playing linebacker, but playing on special teams, are really things that are going to set him apart. I think he's not only going to make the 53-man roster this season, I think he's going to find his way into the 2-deep depth chart at some point over the course of the season. And he's going to end up looking like a value pick for the Steelers. So I look at everything that's just kind of going on in that division. I'm really excited to see what Carson's going to be able to do, because not only is he going to be on a team with Troy Fautanu, which is really cool, he'll be able to go up against some just other Huskies, whether it be Roger Rosengarten or Jake Browning. I know those two didn't play at the same time, or, Drew Sample, who's also in Cincinnati. I just think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch Carson Bruner this season, because the Steelers, who are just perennially playoff contenders, have just such a strong defense. And this is something where I look at what Carson Bruner brings to the table, and I don't think he's going to find his way into the starting rotation this year, but he has the skill set, the veteran experience, and everything you need to just consistently be a contributor on defense. And I think, it's really awesome that the Steelers selected him, because they also selected his dad, and his dad still works for the team as an area scout. All of that is great, but Carson was selected off of his own acumen. And he is going to prove why this season. And that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much to all the everydayers out there for tuning in. I really do appreciate your support. It means so much to me, to Lars, this channel. It means so much to us. And as we get into the offseason, please, please, please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. So that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel with new content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, drop them right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Monday.